Good evening. Welcome to the Pearl Report. I'm Diana Lin. The courts have told the Hong Kong government that it must do more to protect people who are tricked in their home countries into coming to Hong Kong for work, but end up abused and in debt here. As Chris Lincoln reports, the judge in a recent judicial review agreed with lawyers for a man known only as ZN that Hong Kong had not lived up to its obligations to protect trafficked victims under the Bill of Rights.
The mid-30s Pakistani national, known in court as ZN, worked more than 3.5 years until late 2010 in Hong Kong on a domestic helper visa for a single Pakistani employer. But it wasn't domestic work. It was 15-hour days, 7 days a week at the employer's mobile phone shop in Mirador Mansion, where he also slept.
When ZN at one point complained about being assaulted by the employer and said he wanted to leave, he was told his family had paid a lot of money to get him to Hong Kong, and he'd have to repay that money first. And if he looked for another job, he'd be killed, and his family in Pakistan would be harmed. In court, ZN said the beatings continued throughout his employment.
ZN had worked for the employer's family in Pakistan. He says he didn't sign a contract to work in Hong Kong and was never paid any of the $4,000 a month the employer said he would receive. He was told he would be given a lump sum at the end. Then in late 2010, after his employer had convinced him to take a holiday in Pakistan, ZN was told there that his contract here had been terminated. In March 2012, ZN made his way back. Using a travel agent he met outside a Chinese embassy in Pakistan to get him to the mainland, from where he was smuggled by boat into Hong Kong. And he started going to government agencies he thought could help him retrieve the money owed him. He admitted to officials at Immigration Tower in Wan Chai that he'd entered Hong Kong illegally. He also sought their help in getting redress for being abused by his former employer. He was told he'd need to go somewhere else. To the immigration section here, in the government offices at Skyline Tower in Kowloon Bay. He explained again how he'd been treated and why he returned to Hong Kong. He was told this was a case for the police. At the Tsim Sha Tsui police station, he explained again and was told nothing could be done for him here because this was an immigration case.
इन्होंने मैंने कोई ऐसी गल नहीं की थी जिन्हें कि मैंने इन्होंने जो मैं सोच के आया सी कि मैंने गिरफ्तार करेंगे मगर इन्होंने मैंने गिरफ्तार नहीं किया इन्होंने मैंने सारी गल दसी कि मैंने बाहर धमकी हर चीज़ मिलती पई है कि मैंने गिरफ्तार कर लो मैं महफूज तुहाडे पुलिस स्टेशन च ही मगर इन्होंने मैंने बाहर दा रास्ता दिखाया सारी गलबात सुनने तो बाद
ZN did find support at the Labor Department in the Cheung Sha Wan government offices. Paperwork was prepared for him to appear at the Labor Tribunal and pursue a claim for some $211,000 in unpaid wages. ZN had been on his own since he came back to Hong Kong, and it would remain that way during an important meeting.
The people who knew me were actually mutual friends of me and my former employer, so they were reluctant to help. And if I would have gotten any help from them, then I wouldn't go to the Labor Tribunal alone.
In his claims, ZN had described ill treatment by his employer, but at the hearing he was told by the interpreter for the tribunal not to describe death threats like this one. Or beatings he had suffered, but to be concerned only about money. And the presiding officer said a 6-month deadline to claim any salary owed had passed, so ZN should try to reach a settlement through an appointed mediator. He ended up accepting and receiving $32,500.
One reason was stress, but partly also because the attitude of the judge at the tribunal and the mediator was not good. They weren't willing to listen to me. They weren't on my side. They go through a reconciliation procedure. So they end up having a settlement. So they don't necessarily get the full sum of what they should be owed. Now that entire procedure does not reflect emotional distress, compensation that they should be owed if there's been physical assault.
Within months, ZN found himself in jail. He told police he'd been attacked by his former employer's brother and others. They said he tried to rob them, and he was charged with theft and entering Hong Kong illegally. Now, he was acquitted of the theft charge in early 2013, but by that time he'd already spent 6 months in jail for smuggling himself into Hong Kong.
It was not until 2014 that he got help from lawyers.
ZN encountered a lot of immigration issues at the time, and through word of mouth, he heard about our firm, and he came to us.
They filed for a judicial review, which began in early 2016, for a declaration the Hong Kong government had failed in its duty to protect him and for damages. Lawyers named 4 arms of government as respondents: the Secretary for Justice, the Director of Immigration, the Commissioner of Police, and the Commissioner for Labor. Judge Kevin Zervos heard the JR and ruled in ZN's favor. He said officers concerned did not appreciate sufficiently, if at all, that ZN may have been the victim of human trafficking for forced labor.
The telltale signs were the applicant's claims that he had been brought to Hong Kong by a fellow countryman who had mistreated him and then returned him to their home country, having not paid him his salary for nearly 4 years. On its face, this warranted investigation.
Early in the proceedings, government lawyers tried to get Judge Zervos off the case.
The government was saying that because he had promoted various trafficking policies in his role as Director of Public Prosecution, that he could not adjudicate upon this judicial review free of bias or perceived bias.
Zervos, as DPP, was on an earlier program made by the Pearl Report discussing the issue.
Activities such as sexual exploitation and forced labour, domestic servitude, debt bondage, human exploitation should be handled by prosecutors with an appropriate level of understanding.
In the end, Zervos denied the application to recuse himself from hearing the JR.
Here's a case where the judge brought an enormous amount of legal expertise and knowledge to the case, which one sees reflected in the final judgment.
Article 4 of the Bill of Rights says, no one should be held in slavery. Slavery and the slave trade in all their forms shall be prohibited. No one should be held in servitude. And no one shall be required to perform forced or compulsory labor. Judge Zervos said the evidence showed ZN was a victim of trafficking for forced labor, and he ruled the Hong Kong government is bound under the Bill of Rights
to enact measures to ensure the prohibition of forced or compulsory labor.
The Hong Kong government said in court that it has been doing that.
Government was arguing that they were fully in compliance based on existing policies and laws and practices.
Judge Zervos disagreed.
If this case is an example of the effectiveness of Hong Kong's regime in tackling human trafficking and forced labor, then it has failed to achieve even the most basic objectives.
Hong Kong has no law against trafficking in people or against forced labor. The government said in court that if it put laws in place and followed the international standard,
certain requirements permitting trafficking victims to remain in the territory temporarily or permanently will subject Hong Kong to the enormous risk of an influx of illegal economic migrants under the pretext of being victims of human trafficking.
Even around Asia, pretty much every other country, apart from, let's say, I believe it's North Korea and Maldives, have laws in place that criminalize either forced labor or human trafficking, if not both.
Simon Young says there may not be a need for any new laws.
It may be that what the real failing here was on the operational side, and just one, failure to recognize that there was a victim of human trafficking. Two, failure to understand what the duties are in tending to the needs of a victim of human trafficking and the failure to assist such an individual.
The government is appealing the judicial review decision. There has yet to be a hearing to determine what ZN receives in damages for what he has gone through.
If he is to be awarded damages, that's in the form of money, that would represent the compensation that would be given to him by the government, not his employer.
The former employer has not been apprehended.
Our client wonders why his employer has not been apprehended every day, and he remains in fear of what the employer would do to him. He remains disappointed and frustrated about that fact.
ZN, while fighting for redress, found something else. He was married in Hong Kong in 2013 and now works here in construction on a dependent visa. When we come back,
we rely on our helper to take care of my daughter. So if she suddenly runs away because of a money issue, then that will cause a big thing for us.
keeping domestic helpers out of debt. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Pearl Report. For years, many of the people who've come to Hong Kong to work have got into debt to get here. They're domestic helpers. Some now, though, are managing to get jobs without paying agencies.
This is the UN's International Labour Office video depicting forced labour. Workers leave behind their families to try to make money to support them. They are tricked into signing contracts. Typically, they're transported to foreign countries where their passports are taken from them so they can't leave. Once there, they're exploited through long working hours and harsh living conditions. Instead of being paid, their wages are kept by the employer, purportedly to cover the cost of keeping them. And the cycle continues. Often in debt, they struggle to make money, yet they can't afford to leave. Kamala came from Sri Lanka to work as a helper in Hong Kong in 2013. Her employer lived on an outlying island and forced her to work at several different residences, plus a hotel, an office, and a construction site.
I felt trapped. I felt like I was being continually worked without end. At the time when I was working in two houses, the employer then told me to work in another house of her friends. And I felt these were all very wrong, and then later I found out that in reality they are actually wrong in Hong Kong laws.
She was paid only $2,500 instead of the proper $4,000 per month for her first contract, and received no days off for the first 3 months. Then it was only 2 days off per month, but not full days off, and on Tuesdays.
By the time I come to Hong Kong Island on my rest days, it would be about 11, 12 in the afternoon. And then again, I have to leave by about 4, 5 in the evening. So I have about 4 to 5 hours just to walk around. And those were weekdays. There was no one around that I could get help from.
During her second contract, she says her employer stopped paying her, and she sensed she was about to be fired.
They asked me for my passport, and then I got scared that they were going to make my ticket and just get rid of me. So that's why I quickly left the employer's house.
By this time, Kamala had met other Sri Lankans. They sent her to a law firm. She is now living in a shelter and pursuing a civil claim against the employer, while her lawyers push government departments.
Too often, they look at these domestic helper cases and dismiss them as ordinary employment matters, when it's actually something much more severe. So we're trying to make that case clear, and we're asking the different departments to investigate the criminal issues carefully.
Kamala left the job in 2015 and is still under pressure to send money home.
It has been a year and about 5, 6 months now since I left. I can't find a job in Hong Kong, and I am having a lot of problems. I have got sick, and I keep thinking about everything. I can't help my family. My parents are waiting for me to come back.
So now you're feeling pressure?
Yes.
After she left her employer, Kamala spent a month at Eastern Hospital. After observation, she was diagnosed with acute polymorphic psychotic disorder with symptoms of schizophrenia associated with acute stress. Kamala continues outpatient visits and is taking drugs. The law firm representing her goes after former employers for more than back wages.
We're trying to sue the ex-employers to get compensation for them financially so that, whether it's injuries to their feelings or to their psychological states or to even maybe physical injuries, that they would get adequate financial compensation for that.
The woman who abused the Indonesian helper Ariana was jailed 6 years. Employers usually escape punishment, though.
A lot of people who have been exploited end up being returned back home. So they never come to light. These employers' behavior is criminal. It is criminal in international law. In most other countries around the world, if you have an employer who's been overworking their employee for about 20 hours a day and they're not giving them any holidays, they would be prosecuted in their criminal system.
Sanuri from Sri Lanka came to Hong Kong to work as a domestic helper, but was first forced by her agency here to work in their office. That's illegal. She lasted less than 2 months in her Hong Kong job, leaving early this year.
Yes, they paid me, but I felt if I stayed in that house for 1 more month, I would have a mental breakdown because it was constantly shouting at me. I felt like my ears were on fire. They were shouting at me. And then I had to work in 2 houses. There were long hours of work, and then I had no food. So I felt like I was going crazy.
She was given no days off during her first month working. In her second month, she had 2 days off and left on the second day. Now she needs to find another job.
Currently, I'm staying at a shelter at Christian Action, but I can't go back home as yet because I've taken a lot of loans to come here. The agency takes a lot of money to come to Hong Kong, and I didn't have the money in hand to pay for all of that, so I had to take a lot of loans to pay for the agency money.
Arlene arrived in Hong Kong $9,000 in debt from fees and charges in the Philippines. She also had to pay a Hong Kong agency 10% of her first month's salary. And when she changed jobs,
they told me I need to pay again, 6,000.
A friend told her to go to the Fair Employment Agency instead.
They said, you don't need to pay for them. And then that's why I tried.
We charge the employers a standard fee, and we don't charge the worker anything.
The agency has been operating about 2 years and is a social enterprise.
We're running pretty much a break-even business right now. So as we grow and scale, then yes, this will become a profitable enterprise, one that can then fund other social initiatives and kind of create bigger change.
It says it has no idea whether the helpers it places in homes here are still paying off debts incurred by taking loans through other agencies or moneylenders. It does not place maids from Indonesia, which, unlike Hong Kong and the Philippines, permits agencies to charge workers substantial fees.
I came to Hong Kong on an internship in 2012, and I saw the problems that domestic workers face. So when I went back to school, I wrote up a business plan, and I sent it out, and some people got a hold of it that said, hey, we'll fund this if you make this happen. People often say, if they're getting abused or mistreated, why don't they leave those jobs? And the reason is because they're oftentimes indebted to the agents who found them work.
Arlene's employer had used other agencies.
Basically, their standard process is they give you the book, and you have to flip through what's in their portfolio and then look through things that you like or you don't like, and then you just pick and pay.
1, 2, 3, 2! Stop cheating. Okay.
She was able to meet Arlene before deciding to hire her.
We told them that we needed someone that can be part of our family. Even cleaning is a second priority. Taking good care of our daughter is the key.
The agency says it vets all workers before introducing them to potential employers.
The focus of our business has been people who are here in Hong Kong already. We do bring over some first-time workers, but those are people who we will typically do the interview as well to make sure that we think that they're qualified to go into a home.
I want someone who had the experience of taking care of newborn baby, who can cook,
and who can, come to work as soon as possible.
Flora hired 2 helpers through the Fair Employment Agency after being told by other agencies that helpers already in Hong Kong wouldn't want to work for her.
So I should hire someone from overseas because helpers who have been in Hong Kong, worked in Hong Kong, they have more options. So they wouldn't like to work with someone who had a newborn baby and who had a big place.
Scott Stiles says some agencies go as far as self-sabotage because it creates more fees for them over time.
They haven't had the incentive of creating really good matches in the long run, because if that worker quits after paying a big fee, okay, well, they'll charge another worker to come in and take that position.
Some agencies, they said this employer is good, but they don't know. They just getting the fees. But I trust the fair agency, they give a good employer.
Mary Grace says she's fine working with a newborn in a big house.
I know this is big, but for me, cleaning this house is not trouble.
They recommended a few candidates, which to me are quite nice. Other agencies are charging, I would say, similar, amount, but they're charging much more on the helpers. So I think that's their profit.
We have not heard of any complaints so far from people that we referred to the Fair Employment. And I think it would be good if they can find an employer through these, because they're not supposed to be charged.
Earlier this year, the government promulgated a code of practice for employment agencies. Like any code of practice, it's voluntary.
The code of practice is only a compilation of already existing policies. It has nothing new.
The code puts in one place laws and regulations under the Employment Ordinance, the Immigration Ordinance, and the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance. And it sets out minimum standards expected from agencies, like avoiding being involved in the financial affairs of job seekers. The Labor Department promised to monitor agencies closely, and it warned them if they don't comply with the code, their license might not be renewed. The Labor Party's Fernando Cheung says checks don't happen often enough to discover misconduct, and fines seldom exceed $10,000.
Well, thank you for watching our show. It will be re-aired on Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday, as well as on TVB.com. Until next time, from the Pearl Report team, good night, good luck, and good health.